we are in an election year, obviously.
The funny season.
Yeah.
Crazy season.
Have to be certifiably crazy to want to hold the office of the United States president. But if you could just give us a bird's eye view of the political landscape in America as you see it and how it relates to religious liberty. What do you see going on?
I have personal opinions about politics, but that really isn't relevant to what Liberty Magazine does, because we are not partisan politically oriented. Of course, almost everything we write directed toward legislators and public officials, it has a political cast to it, and religious liberty is a political interest. Mm-hmm. But this campaign doesn't seem overtly to do with religious liberty, and in some ways, yes, less than some. But Senator Cruz was a champion of the Dominionist party.
Okay.
I don't know if your viewers are familiar with that, but people have the right to be whatever they want in the United States. So when I critique them, it's not that they shouldn't exist, but there's certain viewpoints that are held that have ramifications run to their limit that could be very destabilizing for everyone's religious freedom. There's been a movement in the Protestant religious world for some time in the United States, begun by a fellow named Rushdoony, and his son Gary North, I think son-in-law rather, carried it on. It's called the Christian Reconstructionists. Mm-hmm. And I wish more people understood the existence of this group that you probably never will hear much about, but they're very influential in sort of setting the tone of many of the assumptions that the Christian, politically active Christian right are pushing, and they're known more and more as Dominionists. That is quite a popular term. And the Christian Reconstructionists want to establish, in a nutshell, an Old Testament regime in the United States, where, like Sharia law, you base justice on the Old Testament system. Mm-hmm. And they've enunciated that as part of that, when they get control, which maybe never, after a 6-month cooling off period, there would be mandatory death for homosexuality, adultery, and Sabbath breaking. Wow. Which, of course, they mean Sunday breaking. Right. So that'll show you how tough it is. I noticed one of their representatives showed perhaps a kinder face recently, a year or two ago, on the media. One of them appeared and he said that they had rethought this in view of the whole gay agenda, and that they would not apply the mandatory death penalty when they gain power now, as long as the individuals didn't publicly advance, flaunt, or practice their proclivity.
Oh, how kind of them to make an exception.
Don't ask, don't tell. Now, that's Christian Reconstructionism, but we had a very overt attempt to insert that into the presidential campaign with Senator Cruz. He was not just sympathetic to them, he was a champion of Dominionism, which for Seventh-day Adventists is sort of a early warning sign that there'd be a willingness to perhaps support legislation that would direct or mandate, say, days of worship, or in essence the blue laws that still exist in many states, but it would be overtly now designed to not just restrict certain activities on say Sunday, but perhaps mandate that you have to worship, and that would be very deleterious. Yes. And in an odd sort of a way, most people don't understand, certainly in pre-revolutionary America, I was going to say the United States, it wasn't, the 13 colonies, there were all sorts of laws that compelled people to worship a certain way and on a certain day and so on. There were cases of overt persecution. Quakers were hung in Boston. Roger Williams was imprisoned and expelled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, I think. Okay. So it's not like we're looking to the future for overt persecution on this continent. It's happened.
Yes.
And even after the formation of the United States, we've had some rather egregious situations. The Mormon Church, many Christians, as we found out during a recent presidential election, are disinclined to grant Mormons status as Christians, and that's just prejudice. They claim it, but there's doctrinal differences. But the Mormon Church in its early days so offended the sensibility of the people of Missouri that the governor put out an extermination order on them.
Really?
there was fair game to be killed.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why, as a people, there was their exodus. They pretty much decamped as a group and headed off west and ended up at Salt Lake City.
That's very interesting history.
And further, they were so troublous to the sensibility of a sovereign United States that the president, I wish I could remember the president, so I won't guess at it, but he organized a federal expeditionary force that was sent to deal with these malcontents and rebels in Salt Lake, and the order was that they were to rape and rapine. And it was a strange thing. The Federal Army marched into Salt Lake, and the scouts had given advance warning, but the Mormons decided not to precipitate an attack, so their armed forces stood on each side of the streets as they came into town, and the federal force came in, marched through town and out the other side, and then stopped. No fight. But they were ready to have literally a religion.